So foundational to all of our programs at the Marshall Center, short for the George C. Marshall European Center for Security Studies, are common values. Those values of democracy and freedom and good governance and rule of law, peace and security, conflict prevention and resolution, as well as human rights. If 50% of a nation's society is ignored, how can you progress from autocracy to democracy on that scale? If there's no inclusion, if women aren't truly empowered. And as we learn this week from Dr. Hudson, who I greatly admire, what you do to women, you do to your nation. And importantly, the first political order is the household. So women's role from the macro to the micro in society influences positively the outcomes of progressing more so toward the common values that I just described. As we educate, engage, and empower security partners to collectively affect regional, transnational, and global challenges, how can we possibly do so by leaving 50% of the population of a given nation out? Additionally, we need to progress in the areas where women are underrepresented. Some of our programs, we find it difficult to get the right participants, but that shouldn't be a hindrance to continuing to strive to empower women via the education, the engagement, and the empowerment that we provide at the Marshall Center. Yeah, this forum has been incredibly valuable for me. It's generated new thoughts and ideas that are going to lead to critical thinking as we look to fully incorporate women, peace, and security across a broad spectrum of programs at the Marshall Center. Our program in regional security studies, our program in applied security studies, program in cybersecurity studies, seminar in irregular warfare and hybrid threats, program in terrorism and security studies. We can't progress based on common values in those respective focus areas if we don't have true inclusion and empowerment of women. And so the ideas that Dr. Valerie Hudson generated from her speech all the way through to the ally discussion that I was privileged to be a part of, and then this afternoon, or later this morning, I'm really looking forward to the Arctic scenario where we're going to actually get into a little bit of role playing, if you will, with a lot of women, peace, and security issues being foundational to that dialogue, discussion, and role play. We're really looking across all the programs I just described that we have at the Marshall Center, and we're in our infancy, but we want to fully intertwine women, peace, and security throughout all the programming. We don't want it to be a silo. And again, based on the importance that I already discussed, this is critical in this era of strategic competition, and we heard about that this week relative to women, peace, and security too. And so as the European Center for Security Studies, we are focused on strategic competition vis-a-vis Russia primarily, because we are the European Center for Security Studies, but not to ignore China and Europe and other players that are in that space. Further, regardless of the outcome, and hopefully it's Ukraine's victory, of Russia's unlawful invasion and brutal treatment of the civilian population within Ukraine, regardless of the outcome, Russia is going to continue to be in the gray zone that is irregular warfare and hybrid threats. The only way to progress in terms of our thinking, in terms of our resilience, is the inclusion of women, the empowerment of women. And so we have to do that across all of our programs, and this establishes some baseline for us to bring back in terms of intellectual capital gained, but also in terms of practical steps that we can now take, having met with and discussed with so many experts who are slightly ahead of us and the incorporation of women, peace, and security in their respective curricula at their respective institutes. We're not going to be able to get after the fundamentals of the common values that we share with partners if we're not inclusive, if we're discounting 50% of our population. And I get back to the quote that Dr. Valerie Hudson said, if you get one thing out of this, I want you to remember that what you do to your women, you do to your nation. The insight and ideas that she gave us will really help to enrich our incorporation into our programs as we go forward.